Okay, picture this. India, mid-1950s. It's this brand new nation, just huge, packed with people, languages, traditions. I mean, trying to govern that, it must have felt, well, almost impossible.
Oh, absolutely. Like trying to orchestrate a symphony where every instrument wants to play a different tune, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And right there, in the thick of it, you've got B.R. Ambedkar, key architect of the Constitution, right? And he looks at this enormous challenge, this sheer scale, and he thinks, maybe there's a better way to structure this.
He really did. He wasn't just looking at maps. He was thinking about how government actually works for the people on the ground.
Okay.
How do you make administration effective? How do you make democracy feel real, accessible across these vast, vast areas?
Right. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're digging into Ambedkar's 1955 proposal, his idea to break up some of India's really massive states into smaller, more manageable ones. And, this isn't just some dusty old idea.
Not at all.
His thinking, his arguments, they still pop up in conversations about governance today, even now in 2025. So our mission here is to really get into his head, understand why he proposed this, the world he was seeing then, and kind of trace the ripples of that idea forward.
It's fascinating stuff. Because while India has changed dramatically, many of those core challenges, effective governance, balancing development across diverse regions, they're still very much with us. Ambedkar's perspective from way back then gives us a really useful lens.
Okay, so let's get to the heart of it. What did Ambedkar see as the main problem with these gigantic states back in the 50s? You mentioned Uttar Pradesh. I mean, even then, it was enormous.
Enormous is putting it mildly. Think about the pure logistics. In 1955, Uttar Pradesh had something like 63 million people. Try running that with 1950s technology bullock carts, maybe a telegram if you're lucky.
Wow.
It's like trying to be the CEO of a company today with 240 million employees, speaking different languages, scattered everywhere. It's just mind-boggling. And Ambedkar, in his book from 55, Thoughts on Linguistic States, he didn't mince words. He sort of saw these huge provinces as almost becoming like mini countries.
Many countries?
Yeah, with their own powerful figures, their own agendas.
Yeah.
He even called them out for having VIP egos, suggesting they could become quite inward-looking.
VIP egos. That's quite a phrase. So it wasn't just about the practical difficulty sending memos around. It was also about power becoming too concentrated, too distant.
Exactly. His core argument was that these huge states were fundamentally inefficient. How can you possibly ensure fair development, make sure resources get to where they're needed across such a massive area? And maybe more importantly, he felt the sheer distance, physical and political distance between the average person and their state government was bad for democracy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Use this great analogy. It's like trying to get, decent Wi-Fi in a tiny village versus the super fast 5G you get downtown. He thought smaller states would provide that stronger connection, that more responsive democracy.
That Wi-Fi analogy really works. You can almost feel that disconnect. Trying to run things from a distant capital when communication is slow, transport is difficult. It's like you said, trying to stream 4K video on a dial-up connection. It just wouldn't function properly.
Precisely. And remember, it wasn't just UP. Bihar had around, 38 million people back then? Madhya Pradesh, maybe 26 million. These were colossal administrative units for the infrastructure they had. Ambedkar saw this gap between the rulers and the ruled as a serious structural weakness.
Now, what's interesting is that this was all happening around the same time as the big push for linguistic states, right? States organized around a common language. Ambedkar understood that impulse, didn't he?
Oh, completely. He absolutely got the emotional pull of language, the comfort of your mother tongue, the sense of belonging, being governed in a language you understand. That obviously helps people feel more included, more engaged.
Yeah, it seems obvious.
But he also had some pretty serious warnings about just focusing on language. He saw potential downsides if you weren't careful.
Okay, so what were the red flags for him? Beyond just the sort of cultural comfort factor.
He worried that this powerful linguistic identity, this pride, could actually become what he called a positive disintegrating force. It's a really interesting phrase.
Positive disintegrating force? What did he mean by that?
Well, his fear was that if states became too focused on their linguistic identity, especially if they were really large and powerful, they might start competing with each other, prioritizing their own linguistic group over national unity. It could potentially pull the country apart rather than hold it together.
I see. So it wasn't that linguistic states were inherently bad, but that language alone wasn't enough. Size mattered just as much, maybe more, for governance. It's like planning a dinner party. A cozy family dinner works, everyone talks. But a massive wedding buffet, it gets chaotic, different tables competing for the food, maybe.
That's a great analogy, exactly. He wanted linguistic cohesion, yes, but within states that were functionally effective. States designed for good administration and development first, not just as containers for a language group. Now, looking back, the big reorganization in 1956 did mostly create those linguistic states.
Right, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, that largely happened.
It did, and arguably it addressed a lot of those linguistic aspirations.
Yeah.
But Ambedkar's warning about those disintegrating forces, you still kind of hear echoes of that sometimes, don't you?
Yeah. Maybe in some of those online debates about which language is superior, or those squabbles between states that sometimes have a linguistic edge.
Exactly. It hasn't broken the country, obviously, but that potential tension he spotted, it's still there, simmering under the surface sometimes. He was remarkably prescient about that.
So Ambedkar wasn't just theorizing, he actually had concrete plans, didn't he? He pointed at the map and said, okay, let's split this here and this here.
Absolutely. He wasn't shy about it. In that 1955 book, he laid it out. Bihar, split it in two, Madhya Pradesh, north and south. And the big one, Uttar Pradesh, he said it needed to be divided into three separate states.
3 for UP. And did he have a specific size in mind? Like, what was the magic number for a state to work well, according to him?
She was aiming for roughly 20 million people,
Hmm.
or two core, in Indian numbering. That was his sort of Goldilocks zone. Big enough to have the resources and economic base, to function properly, but small enough for the government to actually be accountable, to be responsive.
Yeah.
Any bigger, he argued, and you just get inefficiency and the people lose control.
Okay, 20 million. So how does that compare to what actually happened? We did eventually get Jharkhand out of Bihar and Chhattisgarh out of Madhya Pradesh, right? That was in 2000.
Yes, exactly. And those divisions did follow the lines Ambedkar suggested, broadly speaking. Jharkhand was carved out of southern Bihar, the idea being to give that region with its distinct tribal populations and mineral wealth its own identity and control over its resources.
And has that worked out?
Well, it's been mixed. Jharkhand certainly got more autonomy. Government became more accessible for many people there. But it's also faced huge challenges. Poverty, governance issues, they haven't vanished. Still, the principle of bringing government closer was definitely realized to an extent.
And Chhattisgarh.
Similar story with Chhattisgarh, split from eastern Madhya Pradesh. It was partly about giving tribal communities more say and allowing both new states, Chhattisgarh and the remaining MP, to focus on their own specific development needs. Again, not perfect. Ongoing struggles exist, but it was a step towards that smaller, more focused model.
But Uttar Pradesh, the one he wanted to split 3 ways. It's still this one massive giant. And its population now is what, over 240 million? That's bigger than Brazil.
It's staggering, absolutely staggering. The challenge Ambedkar saw in 1955 with 60-odd million seems almost quaint compared to governing 240 million today. It's like trying to manage, I don't know, a giant rock concert, a religious festival, and a massive political rally all happening in the same field, constantly shifting.
Yeah, that's a good image.
And his three-way split proposal, with capitals potentially in Meerut for the west, Kanpur for the center, Allahabad for the east, that never happened. But the idea didn't completely die.
Right. Wasn't there a more recent proposal? Mayawati, when she was chief minister?
Exactly. In 2011, she proposed dividing UP into 4 smaller states, Purvanchal, Paschim Pradesh, Bundelkhand, and Awadh.
So even 60 years later, the sheer size was seen as a problem by leaders on the ground. What happened to that 2011 plan?
It ultimately got blocked by the central government at the time. The official reason given was a lack of consensus, which, often covers a whole lot of complex political calculations.
Sure, politics gets in the way.
But the fact that the idea keeps resurfacing, it just shows how potent Ambedkar's original diagnosis was. The problem of governing such a massive, diverse population within one state hasn't gone away. If anything, it's become more acute.
Okay, so beyond just the sheer difficulty, the logistics of it all, what was Ambedkar's core argument for why smaller is better? Economically, democratically?
It really came down to accountability and control. He had this very powerful line: the bigger the state, the greater the demands for expenditure and the lesser the control over it by the people.
Say that again.
The bigger the state, the greater the demands for expenditure and the lesser the control over it by the people. His point was, in a huge state, your tax rupees can feel like they vanish into a black hole. It's hard to track, hard to see the results, hard to hold anyone responsible.
Right, like shouting into the wind.
Exactly. But in a smaller state, things are potentially more transparent. The government is closer. You have a better chance of knowing what's going on, of making your voice heard, of holding leaders' feet to the fire. They can't just plead ignorance about problems in some far-off district quite so easily.
It's like the difference between a giant anonymous city and a small town where everyone kind of knows everyone else's business. Accountability is just built in to some extent.
That's a very good way to put it. And you saw some of that potential realized, perhaps imperfectly, with Jharkhand gaining control over its mineral wealth. Now, did that solve everything? No. Corruption and mismanagement are still big issues. But the potential for the state to direct its own resources was created. Same for Chhattisgarh, focusing on its specific priorities.
But it's not simple, is it? Creating smaller states must have downsides, obstacles. It's obviously not happened easily.
Oh, absolutely not. Change is hard. Politicians often build their entire careers, their power bases, within the existing structure. Splitting a state means splitting votes, splitting budgets, potentially losing influence.
Yeah, vested interests.
Definitely. And then there's the sheer cost and complexity of setting up new state infrastructure, new capitals, new assemblies, dividing up assets and personnel. It's a massive, expensive, and politically fraught undertaking. No wonder there's often resistance.
Now, there's another angle to Ambedkar's argument, wasn't there? About national unity. It seems a bit counterintuitive. Wouldn't smaller states lead to more division?
You'd think so initially, perhaps, but Ambedkar saw it differently. His concern was actually that these oversized states, especially the ones heavily focused on a single language, might start acting like, well, mini nations themselves.
Ah, the VIP egos again?
Kind of. That they might become too powerful, too focused on their own regional identity, and potentially challenge the authority of the center or compete destructively with other states. He believed that smaller states, while having their own identities, would be more naturally inclined to cooperate within the larger national framework.
Like they'd need each other more.
Perhaps. Or maybe just that their scale wouldn't allow them to become quite so dominant or self-sufficient. Think of it like a classroom group project. Smaller groups often have to collaborate better to get the job done, compared to one or two huge groups that might just try to dominate.
That makes sense. And does that connect to debates we still have today about, say, federalism, the power balance between Delhi and the states, or even the uneven economic growth across India?
I think it connects very directly. We see huge economic disparities in 2025.
Yeah.
Right? Some states like Maharashtra or Gujarat are economic powerhouses, while others lag significantly behind. Could smaller, more agile states help level that playing field, allow for more tailored economic strategies?
Actually.
Potentially. In theory, they could be more focused, maybe attract investment differently. But again, the political challenge of actually creating those states and ensuring resources are shared fairly is the massive hurdle.
So pulling it together, Ambedkar's grand vision, especially for splitting UP three ways, it just didn't happen. The political complexities were too great.
Seems that way. It's, like you said earlier, rearranging the furniture when everyone's fighting over the sofa. The political will, the consensus needed for such a radical redraw just wasn't there or hasn't been sustained enough. But, and this is crucial, the creation of Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh in 2000 showed his core idea wasn't totally dismissed. It proved that division was possible and validated his arguments about administrative focus, at least in principle.
And Mayawati's 2011 proposal for UP keeps the idea alive.
Exactly. It shows that the logic that governing 240 million people as one unit is incredibly difficult persists. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What would a three-state or four-state Uttar Pradesh look like? Could it be governed more effectively? Could development be more focused? It's a compelling thought experiment.
It really is. So, okay, let's bring it right back to listener today in 2025. Why should we care about these ideas from a book written almost 70 years ago?
Because fundamentally, this wasn't just academic map drawing for Ambedkar. It was about empowerment. It was about making democracy real for every Indian, giving them a stronger voice, better representation, leaders who are more accountable, and ultimately, a better quality of life. That's never irrelevant.
Right. It's about the nuts and bolts of making a vast, diverse country actually work for its citizens.
Precisely. And it speaks directly to that constant Indian challenge, unity and diversity. How do you maintain both?
Yeah.
Ambedkar's insight was that the structure of governance, the actual size and shape of the administrative units, is a critical piece of that puzzle. Governance needs to be adaptable. It needs to be people-centric.
You know, I can almost picture Ambedkar looking at a map of India today.
Yeah.
And maybe nodding slightly at Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, but then looking at UP and just sort of sighing and saying, nice try, folks, but you're still thinking too big.
Huh. I could absolutely see that. And he probably immediately starts sketching out new lines, refining the vision, driven by that same relentless logic for making things work better for ordinary people. His focus was incredible.
It really was a truly deep commitment to finding practical solutions.
Definitely. His ideas came from such a deep place of understanding the sheer complexity of India and a real desire to build a system that was truly just and equitable.
So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is this. Ambedkar applied this principle of manageable scale of local focus to state governance. But could those same principles breaking down complexity, empowering local units be relevant elsewhere? In other huge systems, other big challenges we face today, maybe even beyond politics, something to chew on.